When I moved into that quiet street, I never expected the woman next door to change everything. She was older, graceful, and carried silence like it had weight, until one rainy afternoon, she smiled and said, "I haven't had company like this in years." I didn't know it then, but that single sentence was the start of something I'd feel in every heartbeat after. I moved into that quiet neighborhood in early spring, the kind of place where mornings smelled of wet grass and evenings faded into the sound of distant laughter. I wasn't looking for anything new in my life, just a bit of calm after years of restless city noise. The house next door looked lived in but tenderly kept, white shutters, ivy climbing the porch rails, a little world someone clearly cared for. I met her on my third day there. I just stepped outside when I saw a paper bag split open near the curb, oranges rolling across the pavement. I hurried over to help, crouching beside her before I even spoke. "Here, let me," she looked up, smiling with quiet surprise. "Thank you," she said, her voice calm but carrying that soft, confident warmth that makes you forget your words for a moment. That was Elena. Her hair, touched with gold and copper, was swept up loosely, a few strands brushing her cheeks. There was something about the way she moved, unhurried, graceful, as if she'd made peace with time instead of chasing it. As we gathered the last of the fruit, she laughed softly and said, "I haven't had company like this in years." It was light, teasing even, but there was something behind it, a kind of loneliness she tried to wrap in humor. After she went inside, I found myself thinking about her words. They stayed with me through the evening, echoing quietly as I unpacked, as if she'd said something more than she intended. Over the next few days, I'd catch glimpses of her through the open window, watering the ferns, stirring something on the stove, humming a tune I couldn't place. She looked peaceful, yet somehow incomplete, like a song missing its final note. One evening, I decided to do something small, maybe foolish. I'd baked banana bread, my way of filling silence, and before I could overthink it, I walked next door with a warm loaf wrapped in foil. When she opened the door, she looked genuinely surprised, then amused. "You bake?" "Only when I'm pretending to be sociable," I said. Her laugh, low, genuine, slightly breathy, filled the space between us. She accepted the bread, thanking me again, her eyes soft but searching, as if trying to understand what kind of person still knocked on doors with warm food. That night, as I sat by my window, I saw her light still on. A gentle glow spilled from her kitchen. I imagined her there, slicing the bread, maybe smiling a little. And that's when I realized, I hadn't just met a neighbor. I'd stumbled into someone's quiet world, and somehow, it already felt familiar. A few mornings later, Elena waved from her porch, a mug of coffee in hand, sunlight spilling across her shoulders. "Since you started this whole neighborly thing," she called out, "the least I can do is return the gesture. Come over this afternoon, I make decent coffee." That afternoon became the beginning of something quiet but magnetic. Her home was exactly how I imagined it, full of light, with framed paintings she'd done herself. Most were half-finished landscapes, muted blues and autumn golds. There was the faint scent of jasmine in the air, a record player humming softly in the corner, and the kind of warmth that made you want to stay longer than you planned. We sat across from each other at her small wooden table, cups steaming between us. Conversation came naturally, as if we were continuing something we'd both forgotten we'd started long ago. She spoke with the calm certainty of someone who'd seen more of life than she'd ever explained, about music that no longer gets made, about books she never finished, about how she used to paint before life got busy taking care of other people. I listened, quietly, studying the way her eyes flickered between laughter and thoughtfulness. There was grace in her pauses, a depth in her silences. She wasn't performing, she was simply there, unfiltered and real. Later, clouds began to gather, one of those sudden summer storms that come without warning. Wind rustled through the trees outside, and she rose to close the garden windows. I stood too, following her to the back room where the curtains danced in the wind. As we reached for the same window latch, our hands brushed. It wasn't much, a simple, accidental touch, but in that brief contact, time slowed. Her fingers were warm, soft against mine. She hesitated, just slightly, before pulling back with a nervous laugh. "Guess the weather wanted some drama today," she said, looking anywhere but at me. The storm came hard then, rain tapping the roof, thunder rolling somewhere beyond the trees. We stood by the window for a while, side by side, watching it fall. Her shoulder brushed mine once, lightly, and neither of us moved away. That afternoon stretched into evening. The rain softened to a hush, and when I finally left, she smiled at the doorway, that same gentle smile, only softer now. "You're welcome here any time," she said quietly. Walking home through the damp air, I realized I was carrying more than the scent of rain on my clothes. I was carrying the warmth of something that had only just begun, something neither of us dared to name yet. After that rainy afternoon, my visits became part of an unspoken rhythm. Sometimes she'd call across the fence while tending her roses, asking if I wanted tea. Other times, I'd show up with groceries she hadn't asked for, claiming they were extras from my trip to the market. Neither of us admitted how much we looked forward to these small excuses. Elena's house began to feel oddly familiar, the scent of lemon polish on the wooden shelves, the way light filtered through her lace curtains in golden strands, the faint ticking of the clock that seemed to keep slower time there. I'd help her with small things, fixing a flickering light, mending a loose hinge, carrying a potted plant to the porch. She'd always thank me with that quiet smile, the kind that reached her eyes and lingered for a heartbeat longer than politeness required. There was nothing romantic in words, not yet, but everything was there in gesture. The way she'd brush a strand of hair behind her ear while listening, the way her laughter softened when she caught me watching her. I began to notice things I shouldn't have noticed, how her perfume shifted through the day, from floral in the morning to something warmer and earthy by evening, how she sometimes stared into space when she thought I wasn't looking, as though remembering a life she'd half forgotten. One evening, she brought out an old photo album. We sat side by side on her sofa, the soft lamplight making the air feel intimate. The photos showed her younger, smiling beside a man I assumed was her husband, and a little boy, her son. Her voice changed as she spoke, quieter now, threaded with both pride and distance. "He's grown now," she said, fingers tracing the photo. "Lives abroad. Says he'll visit next year, but you know how that goes." She smiled faintly, but there was a shimmer in her eyes that betrayed her. "The house feels big sometimes." I didn't know what to say. So I didn't. I simply reached out, placing my hand over hers, slow, certain. Her hand tensed at first, then relaxed under mine. She didn't pull away. The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. After a long moment, she whispered, "You're kind." I wanted to say something, that it wasn't kindness, that I just liked being near her, but the words stayed behind my tongue. That night, as I walked home, the streets felt quieter than usual. Maybe because, for the first time in a long while, I felt something beginning to fill the emptiness, not loudly, not suddenly, but softly, like light finding its way through half-closed blinds. Summer came gently that year, long afternoons, slow sunsets, and the scent of cut grass drifting through every open window. One morning, Elena mentioned she wanted to repaint her porch. "It's been years since I bothered," she said, tapping the worn railing with a finger. "Maybe it's time to make things look alive again." I offered to help before she could refuse. She hesitated, smiling in that way she did when she wanted to say no but didn't mean it. "If you don't mind getting paint all over yourself, then yes, I'd love the help." So that Saturday, we spent the day side by side, brushes in hand, old music playing from a small radio perched on the steps. She wore a loose white shirt and faded jeans, her hair tied up messily, a few curls escaping to catch the sunlight. I don't know what I painted more, the porch or the way she looked under that soft, golden light. The day passed in easy laughter and shared quiet. Sometimes, we talked about nothing, the neighbors, her favorite flowers, the stray cat that slept under her porch. Other times, the silence between us felt deeper than any conversation. I noticed how her arm brushed mine when she leaned forward, how her smile lingered when our eyes met. It was subtle, unspoken, but impossible to ignore. By the time we finished, the porch looked new, pale blue boards gleaming against the fading orange sky. She brought out a pitcher of lemonade and 2 glasses, and we sat on the porch steps, tired but content. The air hummed with the quiet sounds of evening, cicadas, the soft creak of wood cooling beneath us. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed, her voice gentle. "You've made this place feel lighter." I didn't realize how quiet it had become until you started showing up. I turned toward her. "I like being here." She met my eyes, her expression shifting, warmth and uncertainty mingling. "I know," she said softly. "I do too." The world seemed to slow then, the glow of the setting sun, the closeness of her shoulder brushing mine, the quiet rhythm of our breathing. She looked away first, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass, but her voice trembled slightly when she added, "It's strange, how easy it feels." I wanted to tell her it didn't have to be strange. That whatever was happening between us, it felt right. But I didn't. Instead, I just sat there beside her, watching the last bit of sunlight fade over the freshly painted porch, feeling something shift quietly inside both of us, the beginning of something neither of us could name yet, but both already understood. After that evening on the porch, something changed, not in words, but in the air between us. For a few days, everything felt suspended, like the world was waiting for one of us to speak first. But instead of moving closer, Elena began to pull away. She still smiled when we crossed paths, still waved from her garden, but there was a new kind of distance in her eyes, a soft withdrawal, careful and deliberate. The porch lights that once glowed warmly at dusk now stayed dark. My daily habit of walking past her gate felt hollow, as if I were passing by an empty stage after the curtain had fallen. I tried not to take it personally. Maybe she needed space. Maybe I'd crossed an invisible line without realizing it. Still, I missed her, the small conversations, the quiet moments that had filled the empty parts of my days. One afternoon, I knocked on her door, just to check in. She opened it halfway, her smile polite but not the same. "I've just been busy," she said softly, eyes avoiding mine. "Trying to get some things in order." Her tone was kind, but final, a boundary drawn in invisible ink. I nodded, pretending to understand. Days turned into weeks. I filled the silence with work, music, late-night walks, but her absence was louder than any noise. I found myself glancing at her window more often than I should have, hoping to see the faint glow of her lamp. It rarely came. Then one rainy night, when the sky was heavy and restless, there was a soft knock at my door. When I opened it, there she was, umbrella dripping, hair damp, eyes uncertain. She looked like someone caught between running away and staying forever. "I didn't mean to disappear," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I just didn't know how to feel about wanting someone again. It's been a long time since I let anyone close." I stepped aside. "Then don't figure it out alone." She hesitated, then entered quietly. I handed her a towel, made tea, no questions, no pressure. She sat on my couch, holding the mug between her palms, staring into the steam. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she looked up, her eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "You make it hard to stay away," she admitted. I smiled faintly. "Then don't." Outside, the rain fell steady against the windows, a quiet applause for a moment we both knew was fragile but real. The distance had broken, replaced by something quieter, warmer, the beginning of trust finding its way back. The nights after that storm seemed gentler somehow. Elena and I fell into an easy rhythm again, dinners at her place, quiet conversations that stretched into midnight, moments of laughter that filled the silences we no longer feared. There was no need to define anything between us. Whatever it was, friendship, comfort, or something tenderly unnamed, it simply existed, calm and certain. One evening, I found her sitting on the porch swing, a book half open on her lap. The fading light brushed across her face, turning the edges of her hair golden. I joined her, wordlessly, letting the rhythm of the swing match the soft wind around us. "You always sit like you have something on your mind," she said after a moment, her tone light but curious. "Maybe I do," I replied. "But I think you usually get there first." She smiled, but her gaze drifted to the horizon. "Do you ever think about what people would say?" she asked quietly. "If they saw us like this?" Her words caught me off guard, not because of what she said, but because she finally gave voice to what had been hovering between us all along. "I've thought about it," I admitted. "But I care more about what you think." Her eyes softened, searching mine as if weighing the truth behind them. "You make it sound simple." "Maybe it is." She looked down at her hands, fingers tracing the book's worn cover. "You make me feel seen, not as someone's mother, or ex-wife, or the woman who lives alone next door, just me." I didn't realize how much I missed that. I swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing into the quiet between us. "That's the only way I've ever seen you," I said softly. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she reached out, slow, hesitant, her fingers brushing my cheek. The touch was light, trembling, almost unsure, but it sent a quiet ache through me. I covered her hand with mine, holding it there. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. The silence said everything, the hesitation, the longing, the fragile courage of two people daring to feel again. Finally, she whispered, "You scare me, you know." "Why?" "Because you remind me how much of me is still alive." I smiled faintly, still holding her hand against my cheek. "Then let's not be afraid of that." Autumn arrived softly, wrapping the neighborhood in gold and quiet. The porch we'd painted together was now framed by drifting leaves, the wood cool beneath our steps in the early evenings. The air had changed, crisp, scented faintly of wood smoke, but what stayed constant was the rhythm of us. Not hurried. Not defined. Just there. Our connection had settled into something deep and unspoken, a steady warmth that didn't need labels or promises. I'd stop by after work, and she'd already have tea steeping. Sometimes we spoke for hours, sometimes we just sat in easy silence, watching the wind scatter leaves across her garden. One evening, she called me as I was closing my door. "Dinner's ready, only if you're hungry," she said from her porch, her voice playful but shy in the same breath. I smiled. "I'm always hungry." Inside, her home felt even warmer than usual, soft lamplight, the gentle hum of an old jazz record, and the scent of rosemary and baked bread. She'd cooked more than enough for two, though she claimed she hadn't meant to. We ate together, laughing about the music, the neighbors, life's little absurdities. Every so often, our eyes met, lingering a little longer than they should have, but neither of us looked away first anymore. After dinner, we stepped outside with our mugs of tea. The sky was deep orange fading to violet, the kind of evening that makes you want to stay still. A single blanket rested on the porch swing, she picked it up and, without a word, draped half over my shoulders as she sat beside me. The world felt simple in that moment, her hand brushing mine under the fabric, the faint chill in the air, her head finding its place against my shoulder. "You know," she said quietly, voice breaking the long silence, "I haven't had company like this in years." The same words she'd spoken the day we met, but this time, they carried something different. Not loneliness. Gratitude. Peace. I turned slightly toward her, my hand finding hers beneath the blanket. "Then I guess we'll just have to make up for lost time." She laughed softly, that same warm, genuine laugh that had started it all. Her fingers tightened around mine, and she rested her cheek against my arm, eyes half closed. The porch light glowed softly around us, the wind whispering through the trees. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic endings, just two people sitting close, hearts steady, finding comfort in the simplest truth of all: sometimes love doesn't arrive loudly. Sometimes it just comes quietly, and decides to stay. This story touched your heart. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes that love can bloom quietly, even when it's least expected. Dizzy, tell me in the comments, would you have knocked on that neighbor's door, or waited for her to knock first? Your support helps me keep bringing you more slow burn, emotional stories like, The Neighbor said, I haven't had company like this in years. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and never stop believing in gentle love. Red Heart.